Few things in life carry as much vintage prestige as the presence of a real New York adman. That rarefied air is typically reserved for the likes of a bottle of Johnnie Walker Blue, a 1957 Chevy, or a Patek Philippe watch. Perhaps it's because I came of age watching Mad Men, but that hallowed era of Adland is preserved in amber. Highs and lows, warts and all. For me, the long-standing appeal is the collective mission of an ad agency. There's something to admire about the determined process, from pitching to creative brainstorming to distributing the final copy. There's also something worth exploring in greater detail, which brings us to this week's guest. Ellis Verdi is a classic New York ad man with more than a few dozen stories to tell. Ellis worked across various brands and ad agencies in the 1970s and 80s before founding his own firm, DeVito Verdi, in the latter part of the decade. Known for its at times irreverent, at times provocative creative output, DeVito Verdi has endured as a New York-based institution throughout the years and even appeared on the MM+M Agency 100 list. From a medical marketing standpoint, Ellis has worked with a number of prominent hospital and health system clients, which scratches my itch after having covered the sector earlier in my career. Over nearly 40 years, DeVito Verdi has worked with Mount Sinai, Lenox Hill Hospital, Mass General, UChicago Medicine, VCU Health, BayCare, and MetroHealth in Cleveland. He also has tales from the halls of the White House after the agency pitched and won the right to provide ad support for former First Lady Hillary Clinton's Senate campaign in 2000. It's our 60th anniversary year, so who better to have in studio than an industry legend like Ellis for a long-form, wide-ranging interview. But before we get into his Adland journeys throughout the years and the evolution he has seen in medical marketing, we start with an unusual subject: tropical fish. You'll see what I mean about wide-ranging. Please enjoy the conversation. I am so happy to be here with Ellis Verdi, who is, I think when we look at the different ad men in history, I mean, you have a Wikipedia page. Like, I was doing my research on you and you have a Wikipedia page. Like, I don't think you need any introduction, but welcome to the podcast.
I finally arrived with my page. Yeah, thank you. I'm real happy to be here. Happy to talk about what I've been doing for a while in this space, and thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to have you on. I'm so curious to hear about your career and obviously how it ties in with medical marketing and our focus. I do have one Wikipedia question if I can ask it. Yes, I saw on there that when you were in college, you supposedly had 2 tanks full of piranhas.
Oh yeah, that was something.
Is that true?
That is true. That's true. Actually, they were baby piranhas.
Okay.
But what we did, I can't even believe that's on Wikipedia. I should check that out.
Then I had to go.
It's a dangerous source of information now. But it's true. And we would turn the lights down. The tanks were lit. And we'd throw a live goldfish in there, sick as that sounds. And they were baby piranhas, and they just went at it. And, there's probably a little bit of drinking involved and some other stuff, and so you kind of enjoyed the moment, but it was a little sick. I feel bad for those goldfish, but I don't know. It's a thing. It's a thing. I am a tropical fish hobbyist, so it comes from a long history of that hobby, and also I'm a scuba diver, so I enjoy tropical fish. This part of it is a little sick, I admit, but I do like the fish, and I did have other tanks with saltwater fish, with coral and all kinds of stuff. And today I have a mammoth tank at home, which I can't even believe I take care of. It's bigger than I am. It's very sizable, and it's all coral and some great fish and beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. But it takes a long time to take care of. Yeah. It's not easy.
I can imagine.
Cleaning a tank like that is like, okay, I'm going to give my Saturday up to that.
People are like, what'd you do over the weekend? You're like, oh, I was tending to my tropical fish.
Yeah. But it's been a lifelong thing. And when it turned into scuba diving, it was like, that was so much fun. And I was a little into science too, I think, as a kid. So it was kind of a good kind of connection.
Absolutely. It's more than I can say. I can barely keep a goldfish or a beta fish alive. So more power to you. But we could talk about that all day long. I am really curious about your career. Like, again, going through my research and stuff, and it wasn't just Wikipedia. I was looking at different clips and stuff you've done over the years. talk to me a little bit about how you even just like got into advertising. Where'd that bug come from?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I graduated from college and I really had no clue what I wanted to do. I really had no idea. I kind of had a little bit of a instinct to be a lawyer maybe, but geez, I had like 7 jobs my first year, literally 7 jobs. I look at W-2s, and so I look back, and one of those jobs was an advertising job, but I ended up in a place like a law firm, and it was so stuffy, and everybody was in 3-piece suits at that point. I just couldn't live in that environment. So I left after a day. I just said goodbye. And I had about some of that. And then I ended up in an agency, and I was in a media department. And I looked around and I said, maybe this is kind of for me. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed and it was it had a taste of the Mad Men sort of era then, and it, long lunches, people would hang out. I don't know. It just felt like a better environment for me. And I was in media and I wanted to see what the rest of the agency business was like. So I kept going from that point on, and it kind of brought me in. And the creative side got really super interesting. The business and creative side kind of got me kind of pulled into the business. And then it was, and then the history is, it's an incredible history. We had so I went through a number of different jobs, and, Pepsi-Cola company on the client side. But I started my agency, and we were, I would say we were lucky, but we were also, bitten with the entrepreneurial bug. So we had a small group in Soho, just like you would see, on TV when I was watching The Bear the other day, and I was, that kind of environment in a way was my agency when I started. It was that insane. It was that personal. And it was that professional, but it was also incredible in that regard. It was a family. And when we started, we came out, we had one of our first accounts was Daffy's. Daffy's an off-price retailer. It doesn't exist today. It was sold. But we built it from nothing to, I don't know how many stores we helped build it. And so we had a one ad. It showed a picture of a straitjacket.
I saw that in the research. That was very provocative.
We showed a picture of a straitjacket, and we said, if you're paying over $100 for a dress shirt, maybe we suggest a jacket to go with it. Now, this ad went on, billboards, print ads, and some people didn't like it. They were really upset. In fact, the Alliance for Mentally Ill sued us. They're one of the largest lobbying groups in Washington. I think they wanted the press from the lawsuit. They didn't win. They kind of pulled it off, but they pulled away from it. But there were demonstrations in New York. Our pictures were in placards. People walking around Daffy's, saying don't shop at Daffy's. These people, they're people running their advertising are insane, so to speak. And so there was a moment that's kind of launched the agency, which was everybody knew who are these guys that are doing this kind of ads. And then we just kept doing more and more of those kinds of ads because that was in our nature, doing very strong work. And, and there's a long history of doing more of those. In the early days, considered one of the most controversial agencies there was around. And we got many lawsuits. We put an ad on the side of a bus, and Rudy Giuliani decided to take it down. He was mayor. We sued, and he lost. And that was considered one of the largest First Amendment advertising cases in history at the time. So there was a lot of that going on. That's what kind of launched the agency.
I'm curious what that's been like for you, because it is ultimately, at the end of the day, a small business. And the stat that I've always seen float out there is that 50% of small businesses fail within like the first couple of years that they're up and running. And I think that probably takes a certain amount of gumption and foresight and all that sort of stuff. Like, do you identify with that? You said part of it was luck, but like some of it also has to come from within.
Very much. Part was luck, but luck comes when you are stuck in a very strong area, which I call sort of the vision for the company. So you kind of create this feeling that a few people in a group, and my partner certainly was very much part of that. we created how we wanted to go to market. We wanted to do a certain kind of advertising, not mamby-pamby stuff. We wanted to do the real deal. We wanted to be strong and create something of a stir at the same time by accident, not by design. We didn't intend to create a stir. We created work. And the basic philosophy that drove all of us and still today, actually, is that we want to reveal truth. The best ads tell you something. I mean, think about it. If you go to a comedy show and you see a comedian and the comedian says something funny, what's really happening? Why is that funny? It's because it's something in the back of your mind that then says, you go, oh yeah, that's right. You know, I get that. That's funny. And so that's kind of it's revealing truth. It's telling you something that you kind of knew but didn't articulate, and you just heard it and you got excited because that makes sense. That's great advertising, actually. I don't even think it's the stuff we just do. I just think it's the nature of great work, although that's what we aspire to. So we had that sensibility and a few other sensibilities in the beginning that kind of brought us together and kept us going in good times, and then sometimes there's not such good times. So what kept us alive was really that vision and that feeling of what's right and what's the best kind of advertising to put in the marketplace. That's what kept us going. And it was going and going because every year we had more excitement. We elected Hillary Clinton for the first term. We were involved in all kinds of other work, and then we took on more and more different kinds of businesses, and that's how the agency started, essentially.
That Hillary ad that I had seen when I was going through my research, it was the one where it said like not just first, right?
Yeah.
Parlaying the first.
Yeah. That was interesting. Oh, great. Yeah, that was the first commercial that was ever done for Hillary Clinton, and we worked out of the White House actually, which was because she was there. Which has its own set of stories, tons of
that could be a whole other podcast. Can you tell us one story from there?
One story.
I know.
Well, all right. Here's one story. I don't know how great this story is, but I'll tell you two. One quick one and one. One quick one is we're about to pitch this business against all these other pretty well-known political agencies, but we're just startups. We're just like bunch of goofballs actually at that time, and so we go into the holdings place where you're about to go downstairs into the cinema area. We pitched in the cinema area again. Yeah, oh, wow. And so we had to stand, and you can imagine we had to stand where the screen is, looking at the rest of the cinema. Was I think don't hold me to. I think it was recently destroyed by Trump as part of his redoing of the White House. But it has memories for me. So we end up there, but it was in the holding cell, which was kind of waiting for this. It's one of these rooms that you see at the White House, gorgeous paintings on the wall and everything. And for some reason, this creative dude that works for us, who still works for us today, decides to move the painting just because he wants to see if there's anything behind it. I don't know why. What is he doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? We kept asking, what are you doing? He just wants to see if there's something behind it. Anyway, he moves the painting, and so now it's at an angle.
Oh my gosh.
And we're about to get called in. We were warned, we got like a 3-minute warning or something. Okay, you're about to get called in because, in there is Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, all those people.
Yeah.
And so this painting, we can't seem to get it back straight. Oh. And we're screaming at each other. Oh my God, we got to get, by the way, it might even be still like that today.
Yeah.
But that's God. One story. There's a lot of, one other just quick one is, they write up the fact that we're the agents that got the account in USA Today. And we go, wow, that's pretty exciting. But we go to the White House again because we have another meeting. And it's usually on a Sunday. And we go into it's like in an airport. You go to this area where there's a bunch of police and long guns all over the place. And you kind of have to go through a security check. And the security check guys go, whoa, you're the guys from the USA Today. And I'm saying, well, you must see famous people here. What's that have to do with anything? Yeah. They were so excited. And we were like, okay, that's pretty cool. And so became famous. That was sort of another sort of check mark on our fame. list. But I would say that every account has different kind of constructs, challenges. Healthcare has challenges of its own. The challenges that exist in political advertising are pretty unusual.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting, pretty unusual. And I would recommend that if anybody wants to get into advertising for any long-term period, they should try some political advertising. The reason is you literally have seconds to make decisions on marketing.
Mm-hmm.
We would produce a commercial the night that the next day would air. So you'd have to make decisions like within hours about how you're going to communicate, how you're going to fight the good fight.
Mm-hmm.
And those kind of decisions with very smart people in a room that quickly is a real test. The kind of test that you don't go through even in a good advertising agency daily. But it's an interesting kind of business. So we then took it to 5 or 6 other Senate races, and we had to create a division for a while, and did some political advertising for gubernatorial races and stuff like that. So we had some interesting stories there too.
No, it sounds very interesting, and it kind of calls to mind just bringing it back to our focus here in terms of like the medical marketing industry. I hear it from a lot of creatives all the time, like they're under such stringent regulations in terms of what they can and can't say. Certainly when it comes to pharma, I know you've done a lot of stuff with hospitals and stuff, but I do think that there is a kind of like, well, that breeds more innovation and more stuff like that. Do you resonate at all with that in terms of like what it got out of you guys as an agency?
This is how I look at our hospital work. We had it's not pharma, which definitely we live in constraints too, but not the same as pharma.
Yeah.
Pharma lives in a world that's of its own. But this is how we looked at it. All the first 10 years, 20 years of the existence of the agency, you can see from the kind of work we were doing, very funny, outrageous work. We're getting a lot of attention. But we needed to show people that we could be serious and be just as smart and just as cutting and just as effective, but also not just have to depend on humor. I gave you some of those, there's plenty of examples of that. And so we took on the first hospital, which was Mount Sinai. It was in trouble, and we took it on because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to kind of prove to ourselves and to the rest of the world that we can do that kind of work and still do just do it just as effectively. And we were successful. So that was a really good start to the rest of the many years we spent in the hospital world.
And it allows you to, I imagine, where it's like, yeah, you might know me from the Straight Jacket ad or like the different stuff, and being like, no, but we can do stuff that like the whole thing you're trying to drive is better patient outcomes, more people getting the care they need. Yeah. Like that's very, I don't want to say altruistic, but like that's a very noble thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, I want to say this too, which is important. Pretty important, I think, with hospitals is that how we viewed it. And I think this speaks to what you're just talking about, which is, we viewed it as a public service. Mm-hmm. We didn't view it as an institutional advertising. We viewed it as, and that's what the best hospitals are. They're really public service. And that's a view of advertising which would get you into a different headspace in how you advertise and communicate, right? Then, look at this big, white, big, beautiful building we built with the gorgeous flower bed in front of it and all that stuff. We were trying for something else. We were looking for something. And I also should say that about 15% of all the work we did from when we started was in service of public service advertising. So we took about 10 to 15% of the time available to the agency, and we had work for pro-choice movement, for the ACLU. We support the troops. We did work for them. We did a lot of work in public service every year, including currently. And I think by looking at it as a public service, we got to a place that was more interesting from a hospital advertising standpoint, and started things that hadn't been done to that extent before. We kind of innovated quite a bit.
Yeah, your team sent over some examples, in the lead up to this conversation. I used to cover hospitals at another magazine for a number of years, and that was during the COVID pandemic too. And I've always thought when I was covering them, like they didn't really do a great job in terms of telling their brand story or their mission. Again, it was like, look at us, we have the big building where you come for care. And that was kind of it. But the work that they sent along for you, it was very engaging and emotionally compelling there.
Yeah. I mean, it was unbelievable. We had, it was like a year or two after we elected Hillary. They said, well, if you can do that, you can help us because we need help. Sinai was kind of, in a rough position. It was just a liver transplant went bad. This is many years ago. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, they were demerging from NYU. So the entire organization was there were reports about this place going out of business. It was really from a reputation standpoint, it was a challenging environment for Mount Sinai at the time. And the board of directors and the trustees and certainly the president of the hospital is very, very, very important here, brought us in and felt like we can do something, and they let us loose. That is, to be let loose in an environment where people are all about controlling. I don't know if you know that, there's smart people, doctors are going to be, controlling individuals in the sense that they want to make sure that they're going to get the results and everything that they're looking for. They gave us some freedoms that I didn't think I was going to get, but then they were kind of in a position that they had to. And we, I wouldn't say we were the whole cause of the turnaround, but it was certainly a piece of it. Mm-hmm. Was because the advertising we came out with, which was so emotional. It was in print. We used the New York Times at the time very effectively. And, even today people look back and say that that's true breakthrough. And it was breakthrough. And I took that breakthrough nature to many different hospitals afterwards, and becomes part of how we approach, the marketing of hospitals. I mean, essentially, you have something serious happen to you, and you have to make a decision of where to go. You kind of are going to listen to people, right? You're going to listen to the doctor that tells you have a cancer diagnosis, God forbid, but let's say you have a very serious diagnosis. The doctor's going to say you should go to this place or that place and get surgery or whatever. And that's where the dollars and cents are really. Mm-hmm. In the hospital world. And so we have to influence that conversation. We have to make sure that when the doctor says, go to this hospital, you go, yeah, that's a great hospital. Or that the doctor themselves is somewhat influenced. Like in pharma, we influence doctors through advertising all the time. But mm-hmm. to some extent with choices with hospitals, you have to create an environment where your hospital's name comes forth and you say, yeah, that's a place I want to go. I trust that I want to be well cared for there. And that is the way that advertising works in the hospital world the best. Mm-hmm. 'Cause you don't know necessarily when something bad is going to happen, of course, but when it does, you want to be, and we all know which hospitals come to mind, but you want to push yourself into that position where you are a trusted entity. And that became sort of our MO, our reason, our raison d'etre with respect to how we operate in the advertising marketing world for hospitals, and have done many hospitals since, many of all kinds, academic hospitals, community hospitals, mega community hospitals, and in different markets. And we find that there's a lot of similarities, but our job is really to also pull out some of the differences. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of an enjoyable process, I think, that we get, because the same flexibility that we had in Mount Sinai's case, we want to access senior leadership. The real vision for a hospital is still held at the most senior level. And you need to tap into that. You need to feel it, tap into it, so that we can create advertising that reflects the voice of the organization that should be different to some extent elsewhere, depending on which hospital you're at.
Campaign chemistry.
The very best of outdoor advertising is when you see it, you go, fuck.
a weekly podcast from Campaign US, featuring conversations with creatives and marketers leading the industry.
Mike Peck is the Vice President of Creative at Brooks Running.
Santhi Wells, VP of Global Creative at Pinterest.
Hi, Megan Lally here from High Dive.
Today, I was able to grab Aaron Starkman, Global CCO of Rethink.
Listen, follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And for the latest news in our industry, visit campaignlive.com.
I love that from a health brand perspective, is kind of having this idea of like an affirmation of the services that they have and the differentiation. And you talk about it too, like we're recording this here in New York. Like there are so many, you've named Mount Sinai and NYU. We've had Northwell on the show. We just had Hackensack Meridian Health, and obviously they're in Jersey. But like there are so many options in the tri-state area if you have care. And it's like, but if you have that differentiation, if you have that brand messaging that resonates with people in a different way, that can make all the difference.
So, it's really true. I mean, I can give you one big difference. For example, there are a lot of differences, but we also worked for Northwell. We worked for it when Dowling was at North Shore. It was North Shore, and they were just thinking about changing the name. And so we spent some time, and I spent I spent a good amount of time with Dowling. And
CEO Michael Dowling, for those in the audience.
I'm sorry, Michael Dowling. He's actually retired, I think.
Yes,
but he gave me a very different sensibility than the head of Mount Sinai, which was Ken Davis at the time. Mm-hmm. Ken Davis is a doctor, and that's his history. He comes from a place that thinks a certain way about a hospital. Dowling is... The word administrator is probably a low-level word. He's more important than I would call him, but he comes more from an administrative kind of position. He was in politics and stuff like that, but it come more of an administrative kind of position. That mentality is 180 degrees different than a doctor's mentality. I learned from Dowling what it was like to operate at that level with that sensibility, and it was very different than the way Ken Davis did at Mount Sinai, at least from my perspective, being an outsider. Those differences had to appear in the way we work and how we express ourselves for the client. But as I said, you really have to get close to senior leadership, and sometimes that's difficult. But the closer you are, the better your work.
I like you bringing up that example too, because it's something that we hear from a lot of folks, and they're talking about the different pharma or biotech brands they work with. It's like, it can be hard to show your value as a true business partner in that sort of way. But like when you have somebody like Michael Dowling, who is this very affable Irishman, like that makes it a lot easier being like, oh yeah, you have this vision. We can align on that and we go forward.
Yeah. And he was, my first day working, and we got the business. He took me on a road show, essentially, of all of the facilities, and just listening to how he talked about the facilities, his conversation wasn't, we just invented this something last week, which would be what the other guys with Mount Sinai, we invented this, we created. His conversation was, this will be a really great environment for people to come in, and they'll feel comfortable here. So you can see just the way he was talking and how he was having. It's not like they both didn't say the same thing about their facility, but it was the emphasis. Yeah. It was where the conversation began. It was what excited them that made the big, and you know that went downstream. In both cases it went downstream because you saw it and talked to other people and you felt it. And they both were pushing in the other areas. So, hospitals, an academic hospital is pushing to make you understand that we care about you. We have compassion and all that stuff. They're working in the other direction. And a one that's known for compassionate community hospital sensitivities or capabilities are always pushing to make you believe that you don't have to go elsewhere to get serious care. So they're both kind of, balancing the two perspectives, but it's the original perspective that makes a difference in terms of creating the voice for the organization.
Yeah, and people always talk about culture, but that's actually how you manifest culture in an organization. It can have that impact. I want to ask you too, we talked a little bit off mic before we started recording about just the changes that you've seen trend-wise in the ad industry going back to when you first started up. And, there's a lot that we can point to. The fact that we are in a hybrid work environment, the fact that AI has really come into the conversation in a meaningful way. What have been some of the biggest changes from your perspective that have impacted your leadership?
Sure. I think all of what you said makes a big deal difference. And we have changed our environment to meet the needs of a proper balance. And I underline balance because I don't think it's totally digital first, and I don't think it's creative first. I think it's what's the balance and how do you create the balance today in a way that's effective for the client. And so we operate with, we in the video, in multiple areas, we use AI on an administrative basis and a media basis. And, we started doing a bunch of work creatively with the help of AI. Now, you think about in the hospital world, we just did an AI spot, which I really like for a fish, someone who delivers fresh fish. And we did an AI spot.
It all comes back to fish.
It all comes back to fish. That's right. That's funny. But we also used AI to help us conceive of ideas that we could show clients at a higher level, right? Because it's not just a storyboard anymore. We use AI when we want to make something work that doesn't have a dependency on how I feel about a person's and a personality, because then it starts to get dangerous. But there's a lot of other activity that we do that we use AI to help us make the commercial more effective and sometimes far quicker and far less expensive. So AI has played a big role. Digital has played a big role in general, because so much of what hospitals are trying to do is trying to pull patients from other hospitals or other possible, or get more visits. And there is this really, in a scientific environment, which is a hospital, there's this very strong belief by many that you can actually make that happen using various digital capabilities. You can actually target the right person at the right time. And there is some truth to that if you're doing a low acuity kind of stuff. When you get to higher acuity, reputation plays a greater role in it. And the conversation is different, in my view. And that's where the balance has to occur. If someone has if you have an urgent care center as part of your mix, and you want to send people to your urgent care center, and someone has a kid that just got ill, and you want to bring them in and you want to tell them about it. Marketing there might be, put a refrigerator magnet up there, and make sure they know where the place is locally, or it might be even more sophisticated than that. But you can drive a little more of the traffic, if you will. But as I said, when things get a little more serious, those are other people, not just the patient that's making a decision. And the minute you bring in other people and the reputation is involved, you begin to look at a balance that says, well, wait a second, we better communicate broadly, because we don't know when this is going to happen. So you don't know when it's going to happen to yourself, and you better have the name of our hospital on your mind when it does. So the balance is, what do you spend here? What do you spend there? How do you best spend the money? What's most effective? I always joke around. I said, if you're giving out free lollipop, there's this down funnel thing where there's this idea that there's lifetime value of a consumer. So they come in for urgent care, but we keep them in our fray. We get them hooked, and all of a sudden they have something serious happen. They're going to be with us. That could be years later. That's good in someone's imagination. And it might actually happen, but it's good in someone's imagination. I mean, I always joke. I said, it's like giving away free lollipops. Yeah, I'll get them in the door. Am I going to keep them for lifetime value? It's not. It's there are ways and methods to operate, and balancing all those factors, I think, is really what we're about today. So all those factors are really important now, and the new and the change and all the things that are available to us to operate are influencing much of, but not really the core DNA of the creative process, and not really the core DNA of the agency. Definitely not. Because I look at work today, and it's just as compelling as it was years back, at least in our view. So
it's a functionality. It's something that like all agencies in some way have to work with. It doesn't have to replace everything to that same point. I am curious too, because over the past year or so, we've seen a lot of changes in the industry. And I think about the Omnicom takeover of IPG, and there's been consolidation. There's been the move of private equity coming in. Like, what do you make of that? Like, your name is on the agency. Like, what do you make of seeing those kind of like waves?
Yeah. There's so many ways to tackle it. So first, let me just say that this agency has been independent, unusually so, for so many years, right? So but that doesn't mean that we haven't been approached. We've been approached many times over the years, and I've never found real potential growth as it relates to being purchased. I find personally, economically, but that's not really enough for me. I started a business with a sense that independence was everything I had, and it's hard to give that up so quickly. So that's just one aspect of it for us. But and so we've been up against big agencies and mega agencies, and we've seen the changes, and we've looked at, what we could do ourselves to improve. But I also don't know if the focus is too much on the economics of the industry when creativity is really our difference. Mm-hmm. Let me get into that just a little bit. Almost everybody could do everything else. If you wanted to. If you want to spend money to buy it, you can buy the capability. You can buy you can buy another company to do it. You can buy it as an internal resource. Most of that stuff, most of that digital stuff, even some of the other kinds of media, those are all somewhat commoditized. Now they can everybody's putting their own package together and say we're different, but it's essentially commoditized. The part that's not is creative thinking. That is unique. It'll be a value added forever. And creativity is the essence of why we're different. Otherwise, you would merge and purge and whatever, because who cares? Mm-hmm. It's all really the same stuff being repackaged. And I see that as kind of the mistake that people make. Most of it because the economics today have you do all of that. But the real economics will be lost because we all realize that Facebook will start doing advertising for us. Yeah. And if you don't care about your creative product, somebody else is just going to do it without caring, and you won't be promoting really why you're different. So agencies lost a lot of that when they started to go through this process. Digital had a lot to do with it. The platforms had a lot to do with it. They lost a bit of the essence of who they were. Certainly, private equity is not going to help either. So because they have a total financial mindset. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's a loss there. There are some of us in the creative world that still believe in our difference, and I think it's coming back. Believe it or not, I think we're gonna continue to show off our creative chops, and people will notice that they can't do that themselves. Clients, that is, and so it'll continue to be our essence. And as long as we balance it, it's not like we're saying, we're not doing that stuff, because it's commodity. We do all of it, but we put it in the right perspective. And that's important for the client.
And that was a big conversation coming out of Cannes, too. Like, I think about from both the medical marketing side, and we have our friends over at PR Week and Campaign that were saying, like, oh, yeah, when you look at the broader ad landscape, a lot more focus on craft, a lot more focus on like the stuff that actually, to your point, differentiates. And it's like, yeah, that there should be a natural pendulum swing back in that direction.
I think there will be, and I think it already is. It already exists. I have examples, but it's really a fine tuning at the end of the day. So, you go into a meeting today, you don't not talk about digital. That would be silly, and you really should talk more about creative and its importance. The interesting thing is the comeback is really coming from what I call the quote unquote scientists. I don't know if you follow the folks from England and so on that do a lot of work to try to prove advertising, what works, what doesn't work. And they are, of all the people, all these years of doing work, the scientists are telling us, hey, creative is important, television is important, and how you approach and getting attention is important. And people are now talking about mental availability. That's kind of a version of top of mind awareness, which we've been talking about for I don't know how many years. Mm-hmm. So it is not sounding so new if you were in the business for a while, but it's refreshing to see that the scientists are now taking hold. They are also complaining. Actually, recently I read it. They're also complaining, why aren't clients listening to us? They should listen to us. Performance marketing is an endless kind of hole. It's not going to get you real growth long term. It might prove to you that something's working or not working, and you might feel good, but it's really not working. And they start to go through the analysis. So that's kind of a shift, right? I mean, you'd say that's kind of, maybe we're at the peak, or maybe we're at a place where we're going to see a comeback in creativity. But they are, in a funny way, leading a little bit of it.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting dynamic at play for sure. Ellis, it's been wonderful having you here on the podcast. I think this is, I think about the conversations that we have with so many different people across the industry. You have so many different vantage points to attack, and I love hearing all of them. I want to give you one last final word, which I don't want it to seem like overly sentimental, but you have been in the industry for decades. If you could go back to yourself when you started the agency, knowing what you know now, and just say, like, here's one piece of advice that you would pass along to that younger self, what would that be?
Do the same thing you did when you were younger. Just do it exactly the same way.
Do it the same way?
It was right for when it was right. It was just, we always led with our heart and our soul and our belief that we had something to offer people. And that was the essence of it all the time. And I think that essence hasn't disappeared, and it remains our strength, and was our strength from when we were, when we looked like the bear. It was really, it was always the people that I get notes all the time. I get emails all the time. Some of them refer back to the old days. Some of them talk about some of the new work and how exciting it is. And I get these notes from people that used to work with us. They were like in their 20s, and now they're creative directors of agencies. They're running agencies. And it's just kind of a touching thing to get those kind of interactions going today. I love getting those notes. And life goes on. I'm upset because somebody just passed away who was a very close creative person who worked for the agency for years. But I guess life goes on.
Yeah. I think it's a fitting way to end here. Really appreciate you coming into the studio and giving your time and insights. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed it very much. I always like talking about myself, sometimes too much.
We hope you enjoyed that conversation. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the MM+M podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to MM+M by going to mmm-online.com and signing up for our daily morning newsletter as well as our print magazine. We'll be back with a new episode in your podcast feed next week, but in the meantime, take care.
Campaign chemistry.
The very best of outdoor advertising is when you see it, you go,
A weekly podcast from Campaign US, featuring conversations with creatives and marketers leading the industry.
Mike Peck is the Vice President of Creative at Brooks Running.
Santhi Wells, VP of Global Creative at Pinterest.
Hi, Megan Lally here from High Dive.
Today, I was able to grab Aaron Starkman, Global CCO of Rethink.
Listen, follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And for the latest news in our industry, visit campaignlive.com.